I still remember the exact moment my life began to fracture, though at the time it was only a hairline crack in the glass. I was standing in our kitchen rinsing dishes, the sound of water rushing from the faucet, drowning out the hum of Michael's shower upstairs. Then came that soft, innocuous chime from his phone, left charging on the counter. I wasn't snooping. God knows I'd never been that wife, the suspicious, jealous type. But instinct is a strange, powerful thing. My eyes drifted to the screen. One preview line. Can't wait for our next escape. I'm still feeling you. The sender was saved as V Work Project. My heart stuttered. Work Project. That was the story he'd been leaning on lately. Late nights, out-of-town meetings, weekend retreats for strategic planning. I placed the phone back down, trying to swallow the sudden rise of nausea. Maybe it was just a flirtatious colleague crossing a line. Michael was charming. People adored him. But the words, "I'm still feeling you," they weren't careless. They were intimate. I told myself not to spiral. I told myself to breathe. I told myself that after 12 years of marriage, after building a home and a life together, I owed him trust. So I stayed silent. I didn't mention it. I folded that fear into the back of my mind like a letter I wasn't ready to open. But the cracks spread. The emergency meetings, the unexplained dinners, receipts tucked into his pockets, champagne when he only ever drank Scotch dinners for two. On nights he swore he ate at his desk, each one another thread unraveling the fabric of my faith in him. I wasn't stupid, but there's a vast difference between suspecting and knowing. The knowing came one Wednesday afternoon. I had just left a client meeting nearby and thought on a whim to surprise him with coffee. I remember smiling to myself as I carried those cups, thinking how pleased he'd be. But the receptionist gave me a strange look. "Michael. He's not in today. Took a personal day." My smile froze. A personal day. He had left the house that morning with his briefcase, kissed my cheek, told me about endless budgeting meetings. And yet here I was being told he'd never shown up. I walked out into the sunlight with those coffee cups burning in my hands, my legs shaky. That night, while he slept beside me, I broke one of my most sacred promises to myself. I tracked his phone. And there it was, blinking back at me, like a betrayal lit up on the map, the cabin. Our cabin in the mountains. The cabin had been my dream, my sanctuary. I'd poured my soul into designing it, every chair, every lampshade, every throw pillow chosen with care. It was where we'd celebrated anniversaries, healed after arguments, escaped from the grind of city life. It was ours. And now, while I lay alone in our marital bed, he was there with someone else. The truth didn't fully sink in until I checked our shared cloud storage. He had forgotten to delete the photos. Not explicit ones, thank God, but enough. A woman's jacket hanging beside his on our custom coat rack. A wine glass with lipstick smudged bright red, not my shade. And then the cruelest dagger of all, a selfie of Michael at the lake, and in the blurred background, Vanessa. Vanessa, my so-called friend. The woman I'd spent hours with over design projects, the one I'd laughed with at brunch, the one whose husband David shared fishing trips with Michael. She wasn't just some faceless affair. She was someone I had welcomed into my life, into my home, into my trust. I dropped the phone. My hands went numb. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by the evidence of my imploding marriage, staring into nothing. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes everything you thought was solid. Suddenly, every memory felt suspect. Every smile, every "I love you" whispered at night. Were they all lies? I wanted to scream, to smash every glass in the kitchen, to drive up to the cabin that very night and burn it all down. But I did nothing. I sat frozen until the tears dried on my cheeks. And then something shifted inside me. A cold clarity began to harden where the raw pain had been. I wasn't going to give Michael the satisfaction of a messy confrontation. I wasn't going to let Vanessa paint me as the jealous, unhinged wife. No. If they wanted to play games, I could play too, and I would play better. I would choose my time, my place, my terms. But first there was someone I needed to see. Someone who deserved to know as much as I did. David. Her husband. The man who had sat across from me at countless dinners laughing oblivious. Or so I thought. The hardest part was figuring out how to tell him. How do you break news like that? There's no polite way to say, "My husband and your wife are betraying us together." There's no card for that aisle in the store. I chose a quiet cafe far from our usual spots. When he walked in, I hardly recognized him. In group settings, he was always the entertainer, the storyteller, the one with a booming laugh. But that day he looked smaller. His shoulders caved as though the weight of the world had been pressing down on him. "I think we need to talk about Michael and Vanessa," I said once the small talk had fizzled away. His eyes met mine and I saw something that gutted me, not surprise but resignation. "You know," I whispered. He nodded, tracing the rim of his untouched coffee mug. "For about 3 months now." The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. 3 months. While I had only just stumbled onto the truth, he had been carrying it through dinners, game nights, couples brunches, smiling while he knew. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you?" he countered softly. "Fair point." I stared at David, my throat tight, my chest burning with a mix of shame and anger. Shame that I had been blind for so long. Anger that we were both sitting here, our marriages twisted into some cruel parody, while they laughed together in the very place I thought was sacred. I just found out yesterday, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the photos. In our cabin. My cabin." He took her there. David's jaw clenched. His fingers curled into fists on the table before he relaxed them again, his composure slipping like a mask. "I saw the messages on Vanessa's iPad weeks ago," he confessed. "She didn't log out properly. They've been using your cabin as their little paradise." The word paradise stung. My safe haven, my mountain retreat, my dream project. And now it was the setting of my humiliation. "Vanessa thinks he's going to leave you," David added bitterly. "That they'll start a new life together." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that startled even me. "And what about you? Just collateral damage in her perfect fantasy." His smile was hollow. "Apparently. She says I'm emotionally absent, too focused on work, not passionate enough. Michael makes her feel alive." Each word twisted deeper into me like a knife. I couldn't stop picturing them together, her red lipstick staining my wine glasses, her laughter echoing off my cabin walls, her body tangled with his under the quilt I had chosen for our bed. "Michael told me last month he wanted to renovate the bathroom at the cabin," I said, my voice trembling. "I spent weeks designing it, picking tiles, fixtures, samples. He kept rejecting them, said they weren't right. Now I know why. She was helping him choose." David's hand reached across the table, resting on mine. His palm was warm against my cold, stiff fingers. For a moment, we just sat there staring at each other, united in this unbearable betrayal. A spark of something passed between us, not romantic, not yet. It was solidarity, a recognition that neither of us deserved what was happening to us. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. What did I want, God? I wanted to rewind time. I wanted my husband back, my friend back, my marriage back. I wanted to unmeet Vanessa, to erase every memory of her bright smile and perfect hair. But time doesn't bend backward, and wanting was useless. So instead, I told him my plan. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. I played the oblivious wife to perfection. I kissed Michael goodbye in the mornings, asked about his long nights at the office, listened as he fabricated stories about late meetings and endless deadlines. I smiled at dinners, laughed at his jokes, tucked away every shred of information he handed me. All the while, my fury grew sharper, honed into something I could wield like a blade. The hardest part wasn't pretending with him, it was pretending with her. Vanessa still called, still texted. One afternoon, she even suggested lunch. "It's been too long since we had girl time," she wrote, adding a heart emoji that made bile rise in my throat. But I agreed. I met her at her favorite little bistro, sitting across from the woman who was systematically dismantling my life. She gushed about a new dress, complained that David never noticed her anymore, hinted at taking a solo vacation to find herself. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages I knew were from my husband. "You should go somewhere secluded," I suggested, smiling as I stirred my tea. "Someplace where you can really think about what you want." Her eyes flickered guilt recognition, but she smoothed it over quickly. "Maybe. I haven't decided yet." I excused myself, went to the restroom, and threw up everything I'd just eaten. Then I fixed my makeup, plastered a smile back on my face, and walked out to finish lunch with the woman who had stolen my husband. Meanwhile, David and I continued our secret meetings. Coffee shops, diners, 2 towns over, even the library where no one would think to look. We compared notes, tracked timelines, built a map of their lies. That's when we discovered their pattern the first weekend of every month, like clockwork. Michael had his so-called strategic planning retreats. Vanessa was supposedly visiting her sick aunt in Connecticut, and in reality, they were at my cabin wrapped up in each other. Their next trip was already planned. Early October. The mountains would be burning with autumn color, the air crisp with the first frost. And Michael had already started laying his alibi. He mentioned over breakfast that he'd need to go winterize the cabin, check pipes, clear gutters, make sure the place was ready for snow. I could come with you, I offered, sweetly spreading jam on my toast. We could make it a weekend together. It's been so long since we went up there. His reaction was immediate. No, you've got that big client presentation. Besides, it'll be boring. Just chores and maintenance. I nodded, forcing an understanding smile. You're right, you go ahead. That night, while he slept soundly beside me, I stared up at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was he ever really mine? Or had I been sharing him all along with fantasies, secrets, lies? I thought about our early years, college sweethearts, talking all night, his hand in mine at my father's funeral, dancing in our first apartment before the furniture arrived. Were those memories still real? Or had they always been poisoned by some part of him he kept hidden? The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was realizing that while I had been fully present in our marriage, he had been keeping space reserved for betrayal. So I made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't throw dishes. I wouldn't let him script me as the crazy, heartbroken wife. No, I would bide my time. Let him think he'd gotten away with it. Let him believe I was blind. His arrogance would be his undoing, and I would be the one writing the ending. The first frost came the day before their planned weekend. I stood at the kitchen window that morning, watching the delicate ice crystals form across the glass, thinking how fitting it was. My heart had grown a similar layer of protective ice. The warmth of what we once had was gone. All that remained was clarity and resolve. David and I met at a diner 2 towns over to finalize the plan. By now we were experts in secrecy. We spoke in low voices, careful with our words, yet utterly aligned in purpose. He stirred his coffee for far too long before finally asking, "Are you sure about this? We could just confront them, file for divorce, move on." I set down my spoon, my eyes locking onto his. "Do you want to let them walk away? To let them start their new life together while we're left picking up the pieces?" He sighed, his shoulders heavy with the weight of everything we'd uncovered. "I'm worried about what happens afterward for you, for me, for all of us." His concern softened something in me, but it didn't shake my decision. "I need this, David," I whispered. "I need to look him in the eye when he realizes I know. I need to be the one who ends it, not the discarded one waiting for scraps." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then let's do it right." The plan was simple, elegant. We knew they'd arrive Friday evening just before sundown. Michael had told me he'd leave from work at 3 to beat the traffic. Vanessa told David she'd be with her aunt until Sunday. We would wait until they settled in, until they opened their wine, maybe even started dinner. And then we would walk through that door. But I had one card left to play. A secret even David didn't know. 2 days before their trip, I drove up to the cabin myself under the pretense of a design conference in Boston. My key still fit, of course. The deed had always been in my name, something Michael conveniently forgot when he paraded his mistress through my home. The cabin felt different now. Every corner was tainted, every surface contaminated with their laughter, their intimacy. Still, I moved through each room methodically, reclaiming it piece by piece. In the closet behind spare blankets, I found her things: a robe, slippers, toiletries. She had carved a space for herself in my sanctuary, as if she belonged. My blood boiled, but I left them untouched. Instead, I slid a small recording device under the bed. Not for evidence of sex, I didn't need that poison in my mind, but for their quiet conversations, the things they whispered when they thought no one was listening. I downloaded months of security footage onto a flash drive, silent betrayal captured in high definition, them arriving together, carrying groceries, drinking wine under the stars on my back deck. A life they were building on top of mine. Before leaving, I set up one more camera angled at the front door, the perfect vantage point for the moment of truth. Then I returned to the city carrying not just evidence but a renewed sense of power. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't drowning. Friday arrived heavy with anticipation. David and I met at a hotel outside town, leaving his car behind. Neither of us wanted to return to our empty houses afterward. He pulled a bottle of champagne from his bag and gave me a half smile. For after, to celebrate the end. I arched an eyebrow. Celebrating the death of 2 marriages, or the beginning of our freedom, he countered. I liked that better. The drive up the mountain was quiet, the trees ablaze in autumn fire. Reds and oranges so vivid they hurt my eyes. It should have been beautiful, but all I could think about was how they must have admired this same view laughing in my car, holding hands in my cabin. She's there, David murmured, checking his phone. Has been for an hour. I glanced at the security app. Michael too. They went in together at 5:13. David's hand gripped his knee, his knuckles pale. Are you ready? I inhaled deeply, feeling the ache in my chest harden into steel. I've been ready for weeks. We parked just out of sight. Through the trees, I saw the glow of warm light spilling from the window's smoke curling from the chimney. My chimney. My fireplace. My wood. David's voice was tight beside me. They've made themselves at home. Not for long, I whispered, lifting the champagne. It's showtime. The crunch of gravel under our feet sounded like a drumbeat as we approached. My pulse roared in my ears, but my steps never faltered. We reached the door and I knocked once firmly. It swung open. Michael's face went from shock to confusion to dawning horror in seconds. Alexandra, he breathed, his mouth working like a fish, gasping for air. What are you? Surprise inspection, I said, brightly lifting the champagne. Hope we're not interrupting. Behind him, Vanessa appeared, wrapped in my hand-knitted throw blanket, her eyes wide, her face draining of color. She clutched the fabric tighter like it could shield her from the truth barreling through the doorway. Hello, darling, David said evenly, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. How's your aunt in Connecticut? Michael stumbled backward as if our presence physically pushed him into the cabin. Vanessa froze in the hallway, pale and trembling, clutching the blanket I'd made with my own hands during a winter we once spent here together. For a moment, silence swallowed the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the smell of salmon wafting from the kitchen, my recipe, no doubt. I stepped inside, brushing past Michael, as if I owned the place because I did. My eyes swept the room, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, half a bottle of red logs stacked neatly in the hearth. A picture-perfect evening for 2 lovers playing house in someone else's marriage. Don't stop on our account, I said lightly, walking straight to the cabinet and pulling out 2 more glasses. We brought champagne. A toast seems appropriate, don't you think? Michael's voice cracked as he finally found his footing. Alexandra. I can explain. Oh, I know you can, I cut him off, popping the cork with a sharp bang that made Vanessa flinch. You've always been good at explanations, stories, lies. But tonight isn't about stories. Tonight is about reality. I poured 4 glasses, handing one to David and pointedly to Michael. Vanessa got nothing. She sat down heavily on the sofa, clutching the blanket tighter, her eyes flicking between the 3 of us like a trapped animal. What is this? Michael demanded, anger flaring now that the shock was wearing off. Some kind of ambush. Interesting word, David replied coolly, sipping his champagne. Given the circumstances. Vanessa's voice cracked as she whispered, David, please. This isn't what it looks like. He finished for her, his tone dry and merciless. That's disappointing. I thought you were more creative than that. I settled into my favorite armchair, crossing my legs, embodying the calm hostess. Since we're all here, I said, let's discuss property, specifically this cabin. Michael frowned. What about it? Well, as the legal owner, I've been concerned about the unusual activity here. I replied, pulling out my phone and flashing photos of the deed. In my name only. For tax purposes, yes, but now I'm rather grateful for that little detail. Vanessa blinked, looking at Michael confused. You told me. The flicker of panic in his eyes was delicious. He hadn't told her. He'd spun another story, built another house of cards. I leaned forward, my voice razor sharp. Did he tell you this cabin was purchased with my father's inheritance, that he brought you here into the space I built to heal after burying him? Vanessa shook her head, tears spilling over. Enough! Michael snapped, his voice rising. This isn't productive. David, why don't you and Vanessa give us privacy to— No, David interrupted, his voice iron. I'm not going anywhere. I smiled gratefully at him before turning back to Michael. Besides, we're just getting to the good part, the security footage. I picked up the remote, clicked a few buttons, and the screen above the fireplace flickered to life. There they were, Michael and Vanessa walking hand in hand up the cabin steps month after month. Groceries in hand, a gift-wrapped package, her lipstick-stained wine glass left on the counter. Silent, damning images in crystal clarity. You've been spying on me, Michael barked, his face flushing with fury. No, I corrected calmly. I've been reviewing security footage from my property. Big difference, legally speaking. Vanessa let out a strangled sound, her mascara streaking. I slipped a flash drive from my pocket, twirling it between my fingers. These are from the bedroom cameras, I said smoothly. She gasped. You didn't? Would you like to see? I asked sweetly. I've made a highlight reel. Michael's face went crimson. This is an invasion of privacy. On my property, I tilted my head. No, Michael. This is accountability. I reached into my bag, pulling out my laptop, and opened an email draft. This, I said, my voice calm but sharp, is addressed to your firm's partners. It includes select images from the cabin, along with records of your fraudulent expense reports, dinners charged to clients when you were here with her. Michael's face drained of color. You wouldn't— I turned the screen toward Vanessa. And this draft is for the charity board you chair, the one that prides itself on moral leadership. How do you think they'll respond to evidence of you funding rendezvous with donor money? Vanessa broke into full sobs, mascara streaking her face. Please, Alexandra, my reputation. I laughed, cold and humorless. Your reputation? While you sit half naked in my home, wrapped in my blanket with my husband. Fascinating priorities. David rose, standing beside me, his presence steady. We're not here to destroy you, he said firmly. Though we could. We're here for accountability. Michael's voice was low, defeated. What do you want? Finally, we were getting somewhere. I set my glass down carefully on the coffee table, the fizz of the champagne echoing in the silence between us. What do I want? I repeated slowly, tasting the words. A clean, swift divorce. I keep the cabin, obviously. I take the apartment in the city and half of everything else. You admit to adultery in the filing. None of this irreconcilable differences nonsense. And you disappear from my life, completely. Michael's lips parted, ready to argue, but David cut in. And my terms are simple. I want full custody of Emma, the house half of our assets. And Vanessa takes public responsibility for ending our marriage. Vanessa's eyes went wide, her voice rising in panic. You want to humiliate us? No, I said evenly. We want the truth acknowledged. That's different. Michael began pacing the way he always did when he was strategizing. I could almost hear the calculations whirring in his head, every angle, every loophole, every desperate way out. But for once he held no cards. Not here, not now. And if we refuse, he asked finally, his voice low and dangerous. I smiled, calm and deadly. Then the emails go out. Tonight. Tomorrow morning the world will know exactly who you are. Every expense report will be audited. Every weekend here will be time-stamped in court records. Do you really want your new life together to begin under that kind of spotlight? The silence was thick. Michael and Vanessa exchanged a look, that silent language of conspirators who thought they had the upper hand. But now it was being used to calculate their downfall. You have until morning, I said coldly. David and I are staying at the Highland Inn. We expect your answer by 9 a.m. Vanessa's voice trembled. You're throwing us out. Now it's almost dark. Yes, David said firmly. Tonight. And take all of your things. His gaze flicked to the bag of her belongings I'd found in the closet days before. Michael opened his mouth as if to fight, but the air left him. He knew when he was beaten. He always had that instinct for power, for leverage, but tonight it belonged to me. One more thing, I said, moving to the liquor cabinet. I pulled out a small wrapped box I'd hidden earlier and handed it to Michael. Happy anniversary. His face crumpled when he opened it, a delicate lace handkerchief embroidered with our initials. The traditional gift for 13 years. I had ordered it months ago, back when I still believed in us. I guess you won't be needing this after all, I whispered. They packed in silence, their footsteps heavy against the wood floors. I had chosen the floors I had polished myself. The cabin door closed behind them. A car engine started. Tires crunched down the gravel road until the sound faded into nothing. I stood on the deck, the autumn sky darkening above me, the mountain air sharp and cold. David came to stand beside me, his shoulder warm against mine. He lifted his glass. To new beginnings. I raised mine too, my voice steady. To taking back what's ours. The crystal chimed clear and true, echoing across the mountains. A year later, I stood on that same deck, watching the same mountains burn with fall color. But everything was different. Michael hadn't fought the divorce. The evidence was too damning, the risk to his career too high. Vanessa had dragged hers through court, but in the end, she lost custody, her reputation shredded by her own choices. Their affair hadn't survived 3 months beyond our confrontation. Love built on lies never does. As for me, I rebuilt. Piece by piece, I reclaimed the cabin. I repainted the bedroom, replaced the furniture, burned that cursed blanket in a fire that felt like a cleansing. My business grew. My friendships flourished again. And unexpectedly, David became part of my life, not as a co-conspirator, but as something gentler, something real. We weren't rushing, weren't forcing it. We were simply building honesty where betrayal had once lived. Sometimes I look back and wonder what might have happened if I had never checked his phone that day. If I had stayed in the dark, still smiling at dinners, still planning anniversary trips with a man who had already left me in every way that mattered. But I know the truth now, living in lies isn't living. Painful as it was, betrayal forced me to claim my story. And maybe that's the lesson here. Sometimes the world burns down around you so you can see what you're truly made of. Sometimes endings are beginnings in disguise. If my story has touched you, if you've ever felt broken by betrayal but found the courage to rise again, I invite you to share this moment with me. Like this video, subscribe for more stories, and tell me your own in the comments. I promise you're not alone in this.